15 odd years ago, I started selling classifieds at a newspaper and kind of worked my way up. Eventually did a long homicide story, and then life presented itself with cult stories. And for the past 3 years, I've been exclusively covering cult stories.
If any of you have heard of a cult hunter.
So what's new on the cult beat?
Take your glasses off.
There's an active cult from Alaska that I've been covering for years. They really don't like me.
A self-professed cult hunter.
When they asked my name, they said, "Oh, you're a part of that. You're that cult leader." Now, how'd they hear about that?
I don't know, Mark. Yes, it was supposed to be a big secret, but we found out that's how karma works.
I'm not acting violent. There we go.
Right now, there's a court case in Washington that could determine the entire fate of this group going forward. There'll be some big updates today, but let's first look at the environment these charges came out of. Yet another history of the body. So the body started in Nikiski, Alaska. It's beautiful. This is what it looks like from above. And then people started asking questions. So the football coach is in the cult and he goes to the compound and this is a fundamentalist Christian group. Lots of talk about purity and godliness.
And then Mark took his bare hands and washed my whole body.
You got 6 people living in a teepee on this compound? What the fuck? So way back when, this is all essentially a secret. And then as the story goes, the leader descended into hell, fought Satan, and took back some sins from the devil for God. Now, the scripture this guy wrote, it ended up being public record because it caused some divorces. And it's so bonkers. I had my cult friend, Lisa Van Arsdale, read some of it with me.
Murder is mine. Demons are mine. This guy is very possessive. I'm going to drag your soul to hell. I said, bring it on. I'm not going to resist you.
I forget the part of the Bible. Does Jesus ever say, bring it on?
Thou shalt bringeth it on.
Bring it on. That's funny.
Oh, absolutely. That's like the Bible verse that you get tattooed on your bicep. Like, bring it on. Lust is mine.
So yeah, the scripture about beating up Satan is absurd. But the consequences that arose from people believing in this stuff, taking it as gospel, were pretty terrifying when members took the stand in custody cases.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but the record has to be clear as to what happened.
Mark's like right here, Gary is kneeling right here, and he grabs Mark's arm and his hand, and he's kneeling beside Mark, and he puts Mark's hand on his genitals, and he says, "Look at me." And I just did not want to look up at that point in time. I kind of knew what was coming at that point in time. And he said, "Look at me." Very forceful.
Of course, the leader denies all this, but then there are these tapes from church that kind of give these stories credence.
Gary put his nuts in his hand and said, "Look at that."
A story that didn't come up in court but seems germane to me is the account of a guy who never got to testify.
They told me that when I did not remain there because I was getting cut off, don't worry because we will wash Allison for you. Allison's my 16-year-old daughter.
You can't have that stuff floating around town if you're in the clergy, so the cult split the scene. So the body moved to Hawaii, and then people started asking questions. So they moved to Washington. They're scattered about the Pacific Northwest. With all this moving around, there's this one couple who gets lost in the shuffle, a younger couple, and the husband who stays in the cult ends up getting custody of the kids, which is never a good thing. But as I started asking questions for the first time in 2020, it seemed more and more like this situation was an emergency.
She's still waiting to go back. She still hasn't held the child that she gave birth to.
And it looked like Carrie had given up all rights to this baby to Chris. And, you know, that is a huge concern of mine, is like, where is this baby?
Now, I'm not a mandated reporter, but you hear about an infant that no one can find who was torn away from their mother at childbirth. You call law enforcement. And my experience, I lost my faith in humanity. It was not effective at all. And then I got this tip from a nosy neighbor a year and a half later that sort of made everything come together for a moment.
There's no children here, there's only my property. The cult just gave him the baby. Mark and Ruthie just took the baby and gave it to him.
This is your last and final warning.
But tomorrow you might be able to pull up some arrest records in Okanagan County.
I guess there's nothing on there at the moment.
Chris is sitting in jail.
Chris is in jail?
Chris and Stuart were arrested.
Hey man, you want to step out of the vehicle for me? No, thank you. We are going to make entry into this residence.
You came to my house, you kicked down my door, you stole my property, my daughter's.
Stop.
You're under arrest.
No, I'm not. I'm not under arrest.
Okay.
We breaking it or are we calling out?
We're going in.
There's a lot of people that have conspired against me and testified wrongly.
Okay. Hurry up, they're barricading. Are you referring to your daughter as property?
Yes, I am.
Wow, okay, well your daughter who's a human being is being taken into protective custody.
It seemed like crisis was averted. The missing baby was found, cult members were arrested, the community found out who their new neighbors were. But looking back on it, like a lot of things went wrong. Like, even though there were arrests, no one was actually prosecuted. In fact, the most active legal case last year was filed by Chris, the guy calling his daughter property, who filed a federal case about his troubles and requested a silver dollar per second against wrongdoers. That was very dumb. Another bad thing that happened was that it took forever to get the property back to its mother, which was the whole point. And the guy who had this idea to take the baby, he never had to answer any questions. I guess in the end, it was like the kids are back with their mom, everything's okay. But then new charges came out less than 2 months ago, and they're awful. What just happened, now this is the news, is that the cult leader's wife got Chris out of jail. And now he's out on bail, and they're mounting a defense at their new compound in Tonasket, Washington. This is a story that needs some attention. And the only satisfying outcome that I can see at this point is justice.
A self-professed cult hunter